drummer.
If you enjoyed the battle,
Hey, Fred, have the drummer sound assembly. Trying to get a picture of you. Trying to get a picture of you. Put on the assembly, sir.
Okay, before the...
Almost the entire history of our country is reflected in the history of the small community of Charlestown, Massachusetts, settled in 1629. The Battle of Bunker Hill, which this monument commemorates, came close to obliterating the town. The only traces remaining of the settlers who braved the new continent with Governor John Winthrop are these old headstones in a peaceful burying ground not far from the monument. Beautifully carved, many of them dating from the 1600s, they tell the simple facts of the lives and deaths of English pilgrims in search of religious freedom. In a little colony laid out around Town Hill, beside today's city square, Winthrop erected the first seat of religion, government, law, and learning in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was to Town Hill that young John Harvard came to preach at the meeting house. A little over a year later, he died of consumption. His name lives on at Harvard University, to which he bequeathed his library of over 400 volumes and about 800 pounds. His grave was lost after the assault on Bunker Hill. The occupying British troops used the headstones for thresholds to their barracks. Life was not easy for settlers on the spot the Indians called Mishuam. Supplies were slow in coming from England, and the colonists were plagued by sickness. But the little colony grew into a village, and by the time of the Battle of 1775, was a lively town of some 400 houses. Breed's Hill, where the battle was waged, was named for Breed's pasture on its south slope. The confusion that persists about the names of the hills in Charlestown is reflected in this map drawn by a British officer after the battle. Colonial troops had been ordered to fortify Bunker or Bunker's Hill against British attack. But on the night before the battle, it was decided that Breed's Hill, being nearer the water by which the British would approach, was the more defensible ground. So while the battle was fought on Breed's Hill, where the monument now stands, it's gone down in history as the Battle of Bunker Hill. On the morning of June 17th, the hill was raked by British men of war and artillery fire from Copp's Hill in Boston, across the mouth of the Charles River. Crossing the water in longboats, the British troops under the command of Generals Howe and Piggott formed ranks and charged. The Patriots under Colonel William Prescott had labored all night throwing up fortifications. Ammunition severely limited, their orders were, "Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes." With their third advance, the British finally took the hill, but at the expense of 1,054 men and officers killed and wounded. The Patriots, outnumbered, undersupplied, lost about 410. One of those who gave his life was Joseph Warren, a much-loved young physician and revolutionary. Warren was a newly commissioned Major General when he entered the battle, but over the protests of friends, insisted on fighting as a private in the thick of things. He was killed by a musket shot in the final hour of the battle. All but 15 of the more than 400 houses of Charlestown were burned to the ground that day. Within 5 years, the people had returned and begun rebuilding. This house, recently restored to its original appearance, was among the first they built after the battle. One who returned was Nathaniel Gorham, a president of the Continental Congress and prominent member of the Constitutional Convention. Here, too, lived Samuel Dexter, Jr., U.S. Senator and Secretary of War in the Treasury under John Adams. Jedediah Morse, pastor of Charlestown's First Church Congregational, famed as the father of American geography. His even more distinguished son, Samuel F.B. Morse, inventor of the telegraph. Richard Devens, member of the Provincial Congress and the Committee of Safety, as well as Commissary General of George Washington's Army. Edward Everett, congressman, governor, minister to England, president of Harvard, secretary of state, and U.S. senator. John Boyle O'Reilly, Irish patriot, poet, and editor, who lived out his days in Charlestown after his escape from a British penal colony. In 1800, while Dexter was senator for Massachusetts, Congress authorized the nation's first Navy Yard on 43 acres of Charlestown's waterfront. When it was phased out by the Department of Defense in June of 1974, the shipyard had grown to 130 acres. It had housed the 1,360-foot rope walk, the country's first, where numberless hands and arms and backs wound virtually all our Navy's rope through the end of World War II. It was also the home of the first dry dock in the Western Hemisphere, built in 1833, into which ships were floated for repair. The USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, launched in 1797, was the first ship to be repaired in Dry Dock 1, and also the last. These fashionable houses reflect the prosperity that developed as the newborn nation, capable of fending off her enemies from abroad with ships like Old Ironsides, turned to cultivating her inner resources. They were houses built from harness making, milling, banking, shipping, and designed in styles that befitted a colonial village that had, by the end of the 19th century, grown into a thriving town of 45,000. Large-scale immigration of the Irish to Charlestown began after the potato famine of 1849.
When I came to Charlestown, I wasn't very much impressed with it. I didn't care about it, but after a while I got used to it.
Anne Hartigan, an 86-year-old immigrant from Ireland, recalls some of the decline in the quality of town life.
We had some nice stores and some very nice people. But, I don't know, after a few years it started to go down. The stores disappeared and, well, there was Gamma's Bakery was on the corner of Boston Street. And everybody in town, I guess, used to go there on Sunday morning for baked beans and brown bread. And we had another good bakery, Burns's Bakery on Park Street, which was real good. But those people have all passed on and the bakery's closed.
The construction of the ear-shattering elevated train in the first decade of the century drove many from the neighborhood and began 50 years of urban decay. Charlestown life has been tied to its waterfront from the very beginning.
Well, I've been working on a waterfront for 36 years.
As the elevated train blighted houses early in the century, mechanization at the waterfront blighted job opportunities in the late 60s. Jimmy Murray, longshoreman, has seen the gradual loss of jobs as machines took the place of muscle.
Years ago, you'd take like just one commodity, frozen meat from Australia. Years ago, by the time we uncovered a hatch with all the refrigerator plugs and whatnot, get down below, and you put 40 containers of meat on a board. Maybe you did 15 loads an hour out of a reefer hatch. Today, that comes in a container, 660-pound cartons in one container, about 20 tons. We take it off the ship in approximately a minute and a half now. What used to take a full gang of 24 men, 1 hour, say 10 years ago.
Come on, Zelda, get over here.
He did take the town by a large vote, went on to become a senator, and later on became president of the United States. And of course, the fact that
Town taverns are the working men's social and political clubs. Joe Manley recalls how John F. Kennedy, still dear to the town that helped give him a start, made the rounds of the bars when he campaigned for Congress in the late 40s.
he had an office across the street, I think it's the corner of Franklin Street. He was, at that time, he was running for Congress. And very personable young fellow, and came in the place, and everybody seemed to like him. I think the fact that his name, Kennedy being Irish, was helped him out a little in the town.
In 1941, under President Roosevelt, a housing project of over 1,100 units opened in one corner of the town. Like its counterparts elsewhere, it soon became a scene where pride and respectability fought a never-ending battle with despair and neglect. Partial relief from neglect and decay came in 1965 in the form of urban renewal. The entire town became a renewal project under supervision of the Boston Redevelopment Authority, the BRA. Most were pleased with the BRA as they saw new sidewalks and buildings take shape, but many were angry at the demolition of what they considered reclaimable.
We were asked if we were against urban renewal, what our alternatives were, and one must...
Hazel Jennings was a leader of those who felt that Charlestown could rebuild itself without outside help.
What they would like. And my 5 alternatives were, first of all, for the city of Boston to clean up the vacant lots. Secondly, to put them up on auction for the people of Charlestown. Take care of the people of Charlestown, and never mind these people who thought at first that Charlestown wasn't good enough for them, but now they're very anxious to move back due to the difficulty in transportation. I was sure that if that was done, if they auctioned off the vacant lots in the morning, there would be none left at night, because the people at that time were very anxious to bring Charlestown back. As time went along, I will agree that we, the people in Charlestown, brought out the faults of the BRA, and they have changed many of their tactics.
Actually, the rebirth of Charlestown had begun in the late 50s, before the BRA undertook renewal. People who had fled to the suburbs began to rediscover the charms of a close-knit urban village of distinctive architecture. A trickle, then a stream of people, most of them young, but not all, began to buy and restore some of the older houses that had fallen into disrepair. This one dates from 1800.
Every room in this house is divided in half. And there were 4 apartments on the other end with 2 little bathrooms. I mean, 1 hopper on each floor.
Sam Donnell, who came to Charlestown 25 years ago as a machinist at the Navy Yard, has restored 6 old houses in the town, 5 of the Federal period.
But I always wanted to buy an old house or live in one, and so I came over and I found the one on Pleasant Street, the Irving Cutter. Was it Cutler? And he said you wouldn't want that old rundown place, so I bought it anyway for $250. And then I had a chance in the midst of it to buy these 2 houses. And so I bought the houses, and they sat here for about 5 or 6 years without my doing anything to them, and except pay taxes. And then I came down here because I like the shape of the rooms. I don't like a square room anyway. And moved in, and I'm fairly happy here.
As old houses were brought back to life, gardens that in the 19th century had given Charlestown the name of the Garden City began to blossom again. A scattering of newer residents, while restoring their houses in spare time, work as professional artists.
My work isn't actually influenced by living in Charleston. I write children's books. Most of my characters are animals. Every so often I see a sweet, sleazy old dog or cat around in the streets that I'll incorporate in the story.
Jim Marshall, writer and illustrator, has found that a close-knit community can present hazards to the newcomer.
When I moved to Charlestown first, friends of mine said, "My God, you're moving to Charlestown. You're going to get beaten up. You're going to have rocks thrown through your windows. Your car is going to be smashed up." And I said, "Oh, no. It's not a dangerous area." They were right. It's not an easy kind of place to live in. There's a large part of the population who recoils in horror. They become absolutely palsied with rage at the idea of new people moving into town.
Some people are upset. The town has absorbed newcomers before, but whether the arrival in large numbers of new people with their different ideas will destroy its neighborhood quality and special character, nobody can say. On one day of the year at least, the long history of Boston's oldest neighborhood and the recent burst of Newtown spirit fuse in the annual reenactment of the battle.
What we've done is to try and act as a living memorial to those men who fought and died and suffered at Bunker Hill.
The Charlestown Militia Company was organized 9 years ago under Jimmy O'Neill.
Charlestown men have trained here since 1636, and especially unusual because they trained here for the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was fought just up the street here, 100 yards from where we stand right now.
event of June 17 commemorates the first great battle of the American Revolution. More important, perhaps, it is a celebration of a town's pride in its past and itself.
To the left, hey! To the front, quick, high! Hi, it was a great parade. I really enjoyed myself and everything.
Hey,
Over here, kids are just
Charlestown.
Yeah,
Hey, Charlestown.
great, man.
Charlestown is
I'm
number
from
one.
Worcester. I came all the way up here just to
Charlestown.
parade.
Charlestown's number one. Always will be.
Great.